Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to Umlink Energy Speaks Back, powered by Hark. My name's Paul Webb. I'm the founder of B2B Energy, and I'm your host. And weekly, I present to you experts from around the world. Welcome to episode 86, and my special guest today is going to provide us with insights into making the world sustainable via the roof. Our purpose, as always, is to provide a good understanding of energy management knowledge from around the world, which is available today for us to deliver savings that impact on our planet. On our journey of knowledge sharing, we would like to thank our sponsors, who are Sign Effects for their insulation coating, Smart Call for their AC initiatives, Umlink for taking the confusion out of energy management, Hark Systems, renowned for their energy software, Clean Energy Revolution for their knowledge and networking throughout LinkedIn, B2B Energy for their 11-week energy program and supporting organisations saving their third largest expense, Alexis Energy for power management, Led by Vision for their LED and their controls, Watts for electronics and EV transition, and Carbon Black Global for their waste to energy initiatives. And lastly, our certificate partners, Esther Energy. Our special guest today is an expert in his industry. So without any further ado, I give you Iain Hamilton-Gates. Good afternoon, Iain, and how are you today?
Fantastic, Paul. Yourself?
I'm very well. And as I promised, we're going to dive straight into your accent, where you're based at the moment, and where your name comes from. So there's lots of conversation around that already, but I won't put you through that pain yet. So tell me, you're based in Hungary currently, and what's the temperature doing there at the moment?
Well, it is a blimey 30-something degrees. It's extremely hot, and wow. I'm currently in a little air-conditioned room here because it's actually sweating outside.
Wow.
You wasn't expecting that.
I wouldn't thought of Hungary being, when you think of Hungary, you think of quite cold in Europe, don't you? But it's quite warm climate.
Summers are definitely better than the UK, let's put it that way.
Right.
You'll have like 3 months of summer rather than 2 weeks.
Right. Well, we're sitting at 21 degrees. This is the hottest we've seen it already in the spring. So strange start to our spring season, leading into summer. Obviously, you're used to the UK climate as well. So, Iain, we met on an exhibition, I believe it, right? Future Build. And your technology caught my eye. And I said, look, you guys need to come onto my podcast and us have a chat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you your origin story. So I want to pick up the Scottish name. I want to pick up your accent. I want to pick up you're in Hungary and the fact that we met in the UK. So if we can pick up all of that within 45 minutes, that's going to be perfect.
There's actually another layer to that. So I'll keep that as a little surprise, just to make your show even more interesting.
Brilliant. Okay, so for the benefit of our audience today, can you give us some background and tell us about your origin story?
Okay, I guess the best place to start, well, I'm originally from New Zealand. I've always been very much into the sustainability industry. I'm in my 40s, just to give some context, so I have been around a little while. And I've really seen the way the world has really gone, and especially growing up in New Zealand in the 1980s, everything was all about the ozone hole. And as a kid growing up, I really was affected by that. Having this colored skin, we got fried, not burnt, but fried. And it really sort of opened my eyes to the environment and how precious it is. And I remember that they brought in, I think it was the Montreal Protocol, where banned, CFCs from aerospray cans, etc. So that way back in those early days really got me fascinated in the environment and saving the environment in a certain way. And that developed as I was going through, the sort of normal high school period and things like that. though I did veer off the sustainable path, I decided to start in the construction industry as a quantity surveyor. However, that kind of didn't really rock my boat, so to speak. And I ended up actually working in the film industry film and television industry for the next 15 years.
Was that the item when we're going to go off piste a little bit?
Well, there's more to it.
All right. Oh, blimey.
Yeah. So, like I really enjoyed that industry, but within that industry alone, the film industry in New Zealand was huge, especially leading up after Lord of the Rings, and everyone sort of knows New Zealand a lot from that, especially people outside the Commonwealth. But the industry was a big polluter as well. And so I was part of the Screen Guild, where we were implementing sustainable practices in terms of like, how do we manage 200 people in a beautiful location, and we're taking garbage, bags of like polystyrene cups, and the film industry was a big polluter when you're thinking about it. You're making a film, but you've got trucks, you've got helicopters, you've got all this machinery, you've got 200 people, you've got all these places to stay. So the film industry is, at that point, and probably even to this day, it's not really sustainable from an environmental point of view. So I became involved in that, not only from I was a camera technician at the time, but also behind the scenes, putting my energy into helping making the industry more sustainable. So this really kind of led me down a path of like, I really want to do something more than just being part of like a small association, helping a niche industry at the bottom of the world. So as my life sort of progressed, I ended up moving to Spain, and in the Canary Islands is actually where I'm based part of the time, just to throw it in the mix there. Okay. So yeah, hablo un poco español. So I do speak a little bit of Spanish. And there also I realized that the environment was so fragile in the Canary Islands. It's such a beautiful environment, but with mass tourism, mostly from, from the UK and Germany, like it's 20 million people coming to an island, smaller than London. And it's just the environmental impact was extremely large. So I was involved in a school project there, private schools in the Canary Islands, about becoming eco schools. So I really got involved in this. Every aspect of my life is always coming back to sustainability and also energy, and how to consume less, and try to implement programs into schools at that time to really improve not only just the environmental impacts, but the education. Because, we won't be around forever, and we'll be leaving this world to our children and grandchildren. And look, they've inherited, let's just say, not the best planet than what we had when we were growing up. Mm-hmm. And so education has always been how to basically educate people about the basics, recycling and, consuming less, and carpooling, and all these things that were buzz terms at the time. Fast forward a few years, I moved into the green roof industry, mostly because of a friend of mine. He is the founder and CEO of Diadem, which is the company I now represent. And, his story was all about transforming urban environments and creating green roofs, and really bringing the life, the nature back into the cities. As we move more into an urbanized world, like this is becoming more and more prevalent, especially in the UK, where you've got a lot of rainwater runoff, and, a lot of companies have to pay for that discharge, and most of it, if in London, just ends up in the Thames. And so, the London plan recently has started to try to, grapple with this huge problem, which is obviously some of the benefits of a green roof are that it's capturing that water. We can talk about those details later. But that's where it sort of got to a point where Diadem is a very recognized brand, especially in Europe, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Hungary, where it's originally from. And it has a small presence in the UK. So being the person I am, I consider myself an international. I said to my good friend Peter, the CEO, I was like, let me take on the UK. Let's go to Future Build let's just try and literally try and rock it and use some of my skills and sort of television and marketing and branding and bringing that into this green tech space, making it more a conversation piece, and being on your show is obviously part of that as well, being able to broadcast this message to really make people aware of, how you can actually transform your home or your office and creating a livable environment, and also increasing the property value as well.
Right.
So that's kind of a long story, I guess,
It's an amazing story. It's an amazing story. And I really like, you started off, and I'm going to take you back there regarding New Zealand and the ozone. I remember, what sort of year was that? Because I remember it was, the summers were, obviously they're getting hotter, but it was all about, so Australians and New Zealanders, they don't like the sun that much. Not like us in the UK, we see the sun, we'll take our shirt off and get the sun rays. But in the areas of New Zealand and Australia, you get hit more by the ozone layer there, don't you? Is that, am I right in saying that?
Yeah, you're completely right. I think just to date it, I think, was it 1988 was the Montreal Protocol? I mean, just to age myself, I was 10 years old, but that's how informed I was and how passionate I was from such a young age. I remember Rio, was it 1989, 1990? It was Rio de Janeiro, the World Earth Day or something like that. But back in the 80s, yeah, you're right. It was a message the government was promoting at the time called slip, slop, slap. Slip on a t-shirt, slap on a hat, and then slap on some sunscreen.
Yeah.
So, and then later it's called wrap on some sunglasses. So if you're ever wondering why New Zealanders and Australians always wear sunglasses, it's because of that, actually. We've been sort of trained, so to speak, to be conscious of the sun. Now, skin cancer is the number one cancer in New Zealand. It's the number one killer. In fact, one of my family friends, the father, died, and he was only 40-something years old from skin cancer. I myself had a mole that became cancerous, and I had to get it removed, and I was in my 20s. Now, so that whole process of, the ozone hole, at the time, it was extended right over Antarctica, over New Zealand, over Australia. And it really, it's not what most people maybe in Europe might be thinking. Oh, it's just hot. It's not hot. It fries you.
Yeah, because intense.
It's very intense. The UV rays around about 8 o'clock in the morning, you're like, wow, I need to put sunscreen on.
Yeah.
It really got me upset because it's it doesn't feel right. Later in my life, I actually lived in the States, and I'd be in California. It'd be hotter, but you'd be out in the sun and you'd be fine. But in New Zealand, it'd be, say, 25 degrees. It's not actually that hot, but you'll be cooking. Frying is the way I'd like to term it. So that's really where it all started, the interest in the environment, because I was growing up in it and I really felt the difference. And thankfully, though, over the last 20, 30 years, the ozone hole has actually reduced.
Right. That was going to be one of my questions. Is it reversible? Can we reverse that problem? Or
I'm definitely not the expert in ozone, molecules, but from my personal research, it is reducing, has reduced a lot. At the worst period, I think there was even an ozone hole forming over the Arctic in the north. Right, but it wasn't as large as in the southern hemisphere, which was, all of New Zealand, half of Australia, and all of Antarctica. It was a moving bubble that you would see, and even in the news in New Zealand in that time, you'd have the index ratings on, hey, avoid the sun between 11 and 3 or 4. So these global, environmental, I guess I don't want to say catastrophe, but happenings, right? They really affected me and realized, like I said before, our world's very fragile, and this is something you can't hide from. You can't hide from the sun. You can, but you got to go out and live life, and you literally get a lot of you get burnt very easily. You get skin cancer, like I mentioned, is really high as well. So the message from the government for decades now has been pretty much probably the opposite of the UK,
you
whereas you got to protect yourself.
Yeah. For me, it's the same practice. I use quite high. In fact, I'm quite dark skinned, but I still burn, and I spend a lot of time in Thailand. I don't come back from Thailand very brown. And people go to me, "Oh, you're not very brown." Well, because it's very intense. It hurts. That sun hurts your skin when you're sitting in it or you're out and about in it, and it's too hot. It's far too hot. 40 degrees, the maximum it can go up to. It is very uncomfortable. You're more than happy to get into an area where they've got air conditioning or it's cooler or in the shade. But I do find it makes your skin tingle in that area. And you can feel it. So, okay. So for me again, I wanted to touch on that time because energy management in them days was about controlling and money and just reducing your costs. And then we started getting that in the 80s. We started talking about that, what was happening, and people started becoming more aware. I wouldn't say it triggered them, but they was starting to see telltale points regarding the climate change of where we're heading towards. It's funny because we have sort of ignored the ozone, maybe not for yourself, but it sort of has got ignored and become more of a global saying now, isn't it? It's not. We don't talk about the ozone layer. We talk about climate change because the ozone layer is actually affecting, as you say, it's melting the ice caps. So it is causing all these other, the water levels to go up, and it's been that trigger. And we had Nicholas Ashton on, and he was saying it's Mother Nature. It's not climate change, it's Mother Nature. And it is. It's all nature driven. But us as human beings, I feel, can slow that down. And there's measures we can put in. I don't think we can stop nature and climate change, but I think we can definitely implement things that can change it down. For me, reducing your energy. That's what I preach on a regular basis. And I bring people like yourself in because I see these technologies that are around and I think that's got something that we need to be looking and reviewing, and it's easy to do. And since I've seen your technology, which we're going to talk about, I've actually been putting that in front of my clients and organizations, and they can see it, and they quite like the idea of that. On that subject, let's talk about what you've got, your products, basically.
Yeah, just before we jump in there, if you don't mind, I really want to make one point about the ozone hole and the removing CFCs. The Montreal Protocol, I mean, once again, I was a kid, right? But that was the first global agreement where all nations actually agreed and signed a document saying we're going to phase out CFCs. That was the first time that the world has ever got together and said, hey, look, we really got to do something.
Yeah.
So not to, I'm a big believer that we have changed the climate. For me, growing up, seeing the changes, there's no question, right? So, and when you've seen the ozone hole, the effect it's had in a country like New Zealand, which, I'm from, and you've got millions of other people in New Zealand and Australia being affected by that change actually saved us, right? Australia is an extremely hot country, a lot of droughts, a lot of problems. And if you've got also the ozone hole element to it, then that just makes life living there really, really difficult. Yeah. So because that was actually something that all nations of the world agreed to and actually implemented and done, that was the first celebration, we could almost say, of a collective agreement about something that's affecting our environment. However, recently, they're now tracking that coming out of China, they're actually been hiding a lot of their usage, and it's actually a high concentrations coming out of the factories of China with CFCs. So they've been hiding it. And a lot of companies have shifted away from, say, North America to Asia for their production. And it's still starting to rise again. However, there is a global policy on it. Not that I'm an expert on this. This is just my personal experiences. But what I wanted to celebrate is that it is possible if we all got together. We can actually change. And it's just personal interests, political interests, and business interests that steer the course. Yeah. And so if there's agreement on something, I think as a collective, we can actually make a big difference. Yeah. So getting to regarding our products. So because this is an energy show, I really wanted to talk about some of our latest products, actually, which is all about BioSolar. So this is where, so Diadem has been in the industry for nearly 30 years creating green roofs. So green roof is where you've got a layer of vegetation on top of a roof. There's a lot more elements to that. You've got to have certain like drainage boards to collect the water, so it's self-sustaining. But essentially, you can have 3 different levels of a green roof, just to give your viewers a bit of an insight. You've got extensive, which is the typical one that most people see. These are like the little sedum plants, the little succulents. They're like little small plants that are, spreading across a roof. And the layer of substrate, so it's not soil. That's a key thing. It's not soil. You don't even put soil on your roof because it's going to weigh too much, first of all, and it's probably going to collapse your roof. And second of all, the plants will die because they don't have the nutrients or the irrigation. So substrate is a type of material that's full of nutrients to help the plants survive. So an extensive roof is like a low vegetation form right across the roof. Now, when you're looking at all the roofs of the world, you've got a massive opportunity to improve the environment. As time has developed, it's become more about green roofs and then now blue roofs. So especially in the UK, this is taking off in a big way because blue roofs are a water capture system, right? So it actually stores a large amount of water per square meter, around about 30 square meters, depending on the system, about 30 cubic meters per square meter. So that's a lot of water. Now, when you've got that much water, you're not paying for the discharge of it, so you can save costs. So your audience is business owners, and this is a way to reduce your costs. Just like, as you say, energy is the third biggest expense. Well, I'm not too sure where water discharge comes into that, but I'm sure it's an extra cost.
If you combined all 3, significant cost, isn't it?
Exactly. And so blue roofs, as they call them, is really, I don't want to say it's a buzzword, but it really just encapsulates the idea of capturing water. Mm-hmm. Now, in some countries, for example, Australia, water is super precious, right? They have a drought and then they have a flood. So in the UK, it rains a lot and most of it just goes onto our streets and then ultimately into the nearest stream or river. And obviously it's taking all that water, taking all the heavy metals from vehicles and putting it into our waterways. So blue roofs enable us to capture that water and then reuse it. So you have the options where you can plug it into what they call a grey water system to flush your toilets. So when you're looking at a big commercial building, with your energy efficiency, technology combined with, say, a blue roof, you're really making use of what literally is given to you for free. The sun, right? And water. You can use that water to water the plants. Now, just getting back to the green roofs, there's 3 different types. There's extensive, like I mentioned before, little succulents. There's semi-intensive, and then there's extensive. Now, the difference between the last 2 is essentially you can have like shrubs for semi-intensive, depending on the layer of substrate. So the deeper the layer, the bigger the plant you can have, essentially. And you can actually have trees on roofs. Now, there's obviously you've got to cap the roots, got to have your water membrane protected and with root protection. But essentially, you can have trees on roofs. Now, what does this mean? Well, this gives you opportunities to turn boring roofs into either like an outdoor bar, a rooftop garden, or an environment for animals and plants to germinate, especially bees, which is becoming a rarity these days. Exactly. So it's giving nature a chance to get back into our urban environments. Another big thing about green roofs, just as a general concept, it reduces the urban heat that's caused. In summertime, especially in urban areas like London, for example, the temperature inside the city is a lot hotter than in the countryside. Yeah. Because all of that concrete is just absorbing that heat and then it releases it in the evening and into the night. And so the temperature in the city is hotter than in the countryside. Now, for most people, they're thinking if they're in the UK, oh, I want it to be hotter. Well, yes, you do, maybe, but you probably don't actually. Yeah. and as time goes on, London will become a hotter place in the future, in the near future. We're not talking hundreds of years, we're talking decades. And so we really got to start looking at opportunities to really start to control the heat that's extended out from buildings, and also bringing in obviously you're reducing CO2, you're reducing noise levels inside the buildings. It's a type of insulation as well. So not only for noise, but also for heat. So a green roof in the general concept can bring a lot of benefits to buildings.
Can I just ask one question? For our audience, what size of area? Could we say, look, for a little meter squared area, we could do something there, and for a large area, is there no limitations regarding the size we could do this?
There is no limitation. In fact, a lot of bus shelters are now getting transformed into little green roofs, right? So this would be what they would call extensive. So it's the small plants. So it could be as small as a bus shelter up to 20,000 square meters. Like there really is no limit.
Yeah. And are do the Dutch use this technology to reduce the water levels in say Amsterdam? There's a lot of they use it as their flood protection, don't they? So they absorb the water on the roofs rather than putting that into the drains. They take it into the roof and use that to feed the grass or the plantage, or it's used for that, isn't it? It can be used for that.
Water is a resource, and if you have to pay for water, like I've spent my time in the Canary Islands, you can't drink the water from the tap. The water comes from the sea, and water is super precious there because it doesn't really rain. So when you live in an environment like that, or Australia or California, you start to see water as a different, as a precious resource, which in time it's going to become more precious. So the Dutch are very smart people. They're looking at not only stopping flooding, but then they're seeing it as a resource. And in the UK, it's that shift is happening as well.
Yeah. Do you know, I've only ever seen one building in London with a wall of the plantage and the slight bit on the roof, but only one building. I'm sure it's different now, but 2016 I see that building for the first ever time. Amazing.
Well, unless you're up high or you know someone, you probably won't even see these green roofs, right?
Yeah, right.
One of the things that I've learned recently, which was quite surprising for me, because we've all seen these images of these beautiful buildings in, say, Shanghai with these wall gardens, right? Now, that looks amazing, I must admit. But as I've got further into this industry, I've realized that wall gardens, though they aesthetically look amazing and beautiful, the irrigation of those wall gardens actually is counterproductive to actually being environmental. Mm-hmm. So it's more of an aesthetic rather than actual beneficial to the environment. Whereas a green roof, it absorbs the water, it stores the water, and then the plants reuse the water. Whereas a wall garden, you actually typically have to water those wall gardens, otherwise they fizzle and die, right? And then it's not such a beautiful. So you actually have to water at least two to three times a day in the summer. So that is kind of counterproductive. The whole idea of a green roof is it's self-sustaining. The plants, you don't have to low maintenance, you don't have to take care of them as much. That's for the extensive system. But for the larger, intensive system where you can have trees, obviously you have to maintain that like a normal garden.
Yeah. Is there a way that we can calculate paybacks by doing this?
What do you mean by paybacks?
So the cost to put this in against the water saving that we're going to make.
Yeah, that's really good. The research is still new because blue roofs is really the way to go in order to really get the benefit. It's relatively only a few years old, blue roofs, like in the becoming in the commercial world. So that research, as far as I know, is very limited. I don't know of the exact figures on what you're going to get. It's the idea that if you're moving forward into the future, fresh water is going to be harder to get, right? So the investment is now to get the benefit later on. Mm. But that's a really good question, and I'm sure there's articles being done or getting done on that benefit. But in terms of getting your return on investment, probably the best way I always look at that is, well, you're looking at your property values, right? Everyone loves property values typically, as long as you own a property. If you don't, then it's not so good. But when you're getting that return on investment, because people want extra living spaces. If you've got a little flat and you've got access to a roof and you can put in a green roof or a roof garden, that's just created another living space. So not only are you doing something good for the environment, you're increasing the land value or the property value by creating additional spaces.
And their sustainability score or whatever they need to do to achieve planning, for instance, they could use that to achieve their scoring to ensure that when they come to put that on the market or rent that, they've got that as a balance to say, look, we are doing this to improve our grading.
Exactly. In fact, recently the UK government's just announced that all public buildings and schools are moving in this direction of green roofs.
Right.
So the UK, like perhaps, it's been around for a long enough time. I mean, let's take it back a little bit. Green roofs is actually not new. It's been around for thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
It's just not in the current form. However, moving forward, the UK have really seen this as an opportunity to, really get to net zero. It's part of the overall package. There really is no silver bullet to everything. Like you've got your energy, focusing on energy. Well, the green roofs come into that in different aspects, but combined. And this is what I really want to talk about moving forward, because it's the newest kind of the direction that this industry is going in, is in BioSolar. So this is where you're combining a green roof with solar panels.
Right.
Now, for me personally, this is the win-win. You get the benefit of a green roof, which has all the, like I said before, the benefits of, insulation, noise reduction, but then you've got actually a opportunity to capture the sun. Now, most people think, solar panels, you need to have really hot. Well, actually, the optimum temperature for a solar panel is around about 25 to 35 degrees. Now, on a big commercial roof, when you've got, say dozens of solar panels, that temperature is actually getting up close to 50 degrees. So they're not actually being put into their optimum performance. They're actually overheating. So green roofs, this BioSolar roofs, or is what they're terming it now. BioSolar is really taking the green roof and combining it with solar panels, because the green roof actually lowers the temperature of the surrounding of the solar panels, increasing the performance of the solar panel. So this is an area that personally I can see is the future. This is the way we're going to go forward. So it's a combination, and with solar panels getting rock bottom in prices in reality compared to decades ago, this really is the way forward. So you're combining the best of both.
Is it making the solar panel look a little bit more nicer and more appetite-wise? Like, I'd rather have this big lump of solar on my roof. I'm going to put plants around it and make it look pretty, for instance.
I mean,
is that what we're saying? Is it going to give that look?
It's going to give it an aesthetic quality that is missing. Perhaps it doesn't look so industrial and so commercial looking. However, you got to choose wisely the plants, right? So people actually, one of the first questions at the Future Build event about BioSolar was, if you have lots of plants, doesn't that stop? Don't they just grow over the solar panels?
Over the top?
Yeah, which is a fair question, right? And so I want to answer that for your audiences. You got to choose your plants correctly. Yeah. Like, you're not going to have, for example, a semi-intensive or intensive roof, which is the ones with lots of trees and plants. You're not going to have that.
Or put ivy. Or put a load of ivy on it so it just grows all over the sofa.
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, ivy would not be recommended.
No.
But like cedar mat, the succulents, the small plants that don't need direct sun or can survive in very harsh conditions.
Yeah.
They're the type of plants. Now, so you would look out onto a large commercial building. It'd be a mixture of green and solar panels, and that from aesthetics point of view is great. But like I said, the real benefit is actually in the performance of the solar panel. So if you combine a BioSolar with large drainage boards which capture water, you've got solar, you've got free power, or relatively free or cheap power, and then you're capturing the water, and you can use that for your grey water systems.
Yeah.
And you've got a green roof which is incorporating that. You've got a really high performing system that makes a building a lot more efficient.
Yeah. Tell me, these systems are great. What's the long term? How do we maintain them? Is there a maintenance issue around them?
Yes, there is. And I think a lot of people, you see it around London, to be honest. Like, I mean, I'm based in London at the moment. Well, not physically right now, but and you see them. You think, oh, these people had this great idea. Let's have a green roof. But then they forget that just like your lawn back home, you're going to have to look after it. Otherwise, it's going to overgrow with ivy, for example. So, you've got to maintain it. And they say at least once a year, you should be maintaining an extensive roof.
Right.
And in a semi-intensive roof, that's the one with the larger plants, you would probably have to do more regular maintenance, like at least once every quarter or, every couple of months or something like that, because it's like your garden at home. And if it has the optimum to grow, it's going to grow. And of course, as nature does its job, where, birds will start dropping seeds and other trees will grow, and, you've got to maintain that. Well, that actually brings up another problem, which is maintenance, right? So who's going to maintain your beautiful green roof? Well, there's a lot of maintenance companies out there, but something that a lot of people don't take into consideration or don't think about in the outset is, well, you need to have people on that roof to maintain it. And so then you need to have what they call in the industry, which I don't like the term, but it's man-safe systems or height safety systems. Yeah. So Diadem actually have developed a system probably about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where it actually incorporates into the green roof. So some of the key things about a green roof and with a safety system is that you don't want to penetrate the water membrane of a roof. If you do that, you could create problems, right? There'll be leaks. Yeah. People will be complaining that their roof is leaking, and they'll blame the green roof. Whereas typically it's the typical traditional poles that they drill into I'm just trying to think the old term, like man-safe systems where they drill straight into your water membrane. That really is an archaic and out-of-date system. For example, Diadem's DiaSafe system is actually ballasted by the weight of the green roof. It's very simple to install. And in fact, you're thinking at first, how can this hold someone? But it's passed all the safety standards. Yeah. The weight of the green roof secures the post, and so your team are clipping into all the various posts and can work safely on the roof without falling off. And it's actually the responsibility of the building owner to make sure they've got access to a roof in a safe way. Yeah. So, but like I said,
you're gonna have to go up on that roof anyway, aren't you? There must be some for cleaning or just observation, So there's a need to get on that roof. You wouldn't pick a roof that's sort of angled on the side of a building that no one goes up there anyway, would you? To mount this, possibly.
Yeah. Well, you can have two. You can actually have a up to 45-degree angle for a green roof. Like Diadem's systems are able to go up 45 degrees. Of course, you still have to maintain that. So if you've got a roof where it's got a roof garden, right, you can actually have guardrails. Okay, and our guardrails at Diadem are also based on the ballastate of the green roof. They're weighed down by the green roof. So once again, you're not penetrating the water membrane. So this is where you can actually have guardrails, so you don't need to have harnesses and carabiners and clipping in and stuff like this, which makes it a lot more aesthetically pleasing, especially if you've got a restaurant or a hotel and you've got this beautiful roof and you can actually turn it into a garden and then have these guardrails around there so no one falls off. So you've got a couple options there. If it's just a commercial roof that's not for people to visit or to spend time on, then yes, the DiaSafe system, for example, would be a good solution for that, because you can literally clip in and glide along the roof, maintaining the roof, and it's very safe and easy to install.
Have you considered the funding mechanisms of this? Do you have a funding process?
Actually, interesting you should say that. Actually, from the Future Build event, a couple companies did approach me saying, they provide funding for companies looking to install, green roofs or green technology or, solar roofs, because it's not cheap, especially if you're doing a large commercial project. It adds a lot to the cost, but depends on the country you're in. There are government initiatives and organizations who can help finance that, because, it's a long-term investment. Most green roofs have a lifespan of about 25 years, right, at least, because that's the length of time that most of these products have really been in the market. So, because they're made from recycled plastics, the actual drainage boards, it's reusing materials that would have just ended up in the landfill, putting it on the roof, but they're so strong and durable that they're set to last 25 years. Yeah. So that sounds great, but yes, it is an investment for most people. And so there are mechanisms and companies out there that can help fund that.
But based on the 25 years, that could extend slightly if we maintain the systems correctly. I presume that you put together a PPM, planned preventative maintenance schedule around that anyway, to just improve the life cycle on that. So we're saying 25 years, but it might edge more. We see that with a lot of technology nowadays.
Exactly. Well, I mean, let's be honest, plastic's around for hundreds of years. We just haven't lived long enough to experience it yet. So the roof, if it's well maintained, it will last 25 years easily. I mean, we're a designer and manufacturer, and we recommend installers who are experienced in installing a green roof. And I'll give you a reason why. Recently, there was a small London office that was needing some maintenance work, and it was actually our product from 12 years ago. And I was absolutely fascinated and been capturing just to see what it's like, a time capsule, right? What happened over that 12 years? Well, it wasn't properly maintained. And as we found out, it wasn't properly installed. So when you've got your layers on a green roof, you've got your drainage board, which is kind of the key part of the green roof. You've also got fleece mats that act as a filtering layer that filter all the dirt and make sure the water is as pure as possible. However, this installer 12 years ago was probably not experienced in installing green roofs, and actually put the fleece layer on the wrong and put it on top instead of underneath. And actually, so the substrate on top, it didn't grow to its best potential. The plants never really grew properly. And unfortunately for the owner, after 12 years, they were like, this is just a mess. I want to remove it. We went out there and we had a look at it, and we realized, no, the green roof is actually fine. The only thing is they put it in the wrong order. And so as long as it's installed by a professional, and there's, Diadem is part of the Grow Association in the UK. And, that's a group of, trade companies, association that are making the green industry more cohesive, more professional. There's guidelines. We have our own code. And so the industry is really starting to mature now. Whereas 10, 15 years ago, let's be honest, there was a few cowboys out there, and, they would charge a big buck for something that wasn't what it should be. So to answer your question, with proper maintenance and care and replacing things when needed, there's no question that it can't last, more than 25 years. And it actually improves the longevity of the roof because, the UV light usually eats into the roof after a period of time anyway.
Yeah. And it adds value to the property.
It is, I mean, who wouldn't want a green roof, with somewhere you can relax.
Good. Exactly.
You can have your Thailand scene, you can have your hammock in the background, sipping
your
Mai Tai or something.
I want bamboo on my one.
Well, bamboo is actually really good because it can grow.
That's why I said it.
Yeah. The only thing I'm thinking of with bamboo is you need to have a better quality roof protection layer because bamboo roots go everywhere, right? Yeah. So you got to do it right, but you could.
But it creates an environment. That's what I like about it. It gives off lots of oxygen.
Gives lots of oxygen, gives a place for not only for nature, but for bringing your friends or your colleagues and people somewhere to be. And it's about that reconnecting with nature. Even if you're in the middle of London, right, and you've got this roof terrace, you can have lawns, right? You can actually have to mow your lawn. If you choose to have like a grass lawn, on a green roof, you can have wildflowers. There's so many options, and this is where it's an industry doing this. It's not just one person or one company. It's a collective. You've got specialist people who know the right plants for the right environment, and that's crucial.
There's a building in Cannon Bridge, isn't there? On Cannon Bridge, it's got a lawn on the roof of the building.
I think I've seen that. I've seen that. Yeah.
That was back in the 80s. That went up.
Oh, okay. Okay, I don't know how old that was, but now in London, there's so many green roofs coming up because you can't really, London's you can only go so far with London, right? It's already a large city. It's full of concrete. However, it has the opportunity to be a really world-class sustainable city. And I think because of the London plan, there's a lot of initiatives in the recent London plan that came out, really pushing for water retention, greening up the environment, and really creating a city that's going to last another few hundred years or more, right? So, and I think this is why I feel the UK is a great market in terms of the green roofs, because people can see the value in it. And because land prices are constantly increasing and will always increase because you can't make any more land, the investment pays off. And I think as a building owner or as a homeowner, that if you've got a green roof, people are interested in that. They can see that as an extra added value. And because of that, I think that's where the industry can really start to really grow and be very self-sustaining.
Totally agree. So, Iain, you've been listening to my podcast, and you know just exactly where we are in that podcast now. So, for the benefit of our audience, have you got something that you can give back to them today as a takeaway?
Oof, that's a big question, isn't it? I would say, as a little plug, and I think, reading your book, becoming an energy expert, actually really gives a good insight into the energy market overall. That has helped me understand a different side of this industry because it is all together. In terms of giving back to your audience, I think, listening to your podcast from these experts, you've had a lot of great guests on the show. And I think listening and digesting what everyone has to say and then forming your own opinion and then really looking at your company or your business and how you can be part of this trend. Because the reality is, unless this generation actually pulls their finger out and actually does something, it's going to be too late for a lot of people. So, I'm a big believer in that. And, I've got children, and their environment's worse than when I grew up and definitely worse than my grandparents back in, in the olden days, so to speak, and I think when you're looking at companies like Telstar, building these solar roofs, which are literally tiles, and you've got these wall batteries, you've got electric vehicles coming on the market. I think the industry is really heading in this direction. And I think, I can see sort of a really, there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of money to be made as well, because not only is it high tech, it's going to create better quality jobs, higher skilled, especially, in the various industries and the sustainability and overall.
And on the subject of money, I call it profit with integrity, because we are, us as experts will make money, but it'll be through the integrity of making and saving our planet, or making our planet a better place for our children to live. That's what we're all working towards.
I completely agree. Some say to me, Iain, you've got the gift of the gab, you should be a salesman. And I'm like, no, but I'm not a salesman until I found my calling. And when I'm so passionate about everything to do with the environment and sustainability, then it's not really selling, it's just educating. And if I can make a living from it and I can, grow companies and really help businesses to see these opportunities, then that money gets if it's comes from the right consciousness in the beginning, it then gets trickled and reinvested into future opportunities, especially for education. The Peter Chesmadere, the founder of Diadem, he actually wrote a fairy tale book a number of years ago, and it really it's for children, right? It's really about the idea that you can turn this an urban environment that a lot of children live in. And, I've got kids who now don't like to go outside because of the pandemic. They just want to stay inside on their tablets, which for me as a kid, from New Zealand, it's just absolutely, it upsets me actually. And so the next generation, they really need to be aware of that the world is not just gadgets and tablets and devices and the internet. It's about reconnecting with nature, actually being part of it, using nature, and then benefiting from it.
Yeah. And where can we get that book? Where can you tell us the name of that book? We can go and look for it. That's audience.
A good question. That is a good question. I will have to send you a link, I think.
Send me a link, and I'll put that on this link that you mentioned here. And also, so Iain, how can we find you on LinkedIn? Yes. What's your email address? So you can share that today, and what your website is.
Sure. Okay. I'll start with the website. So it's diadem.com. And if you can see in the background, Diadem, it's pretty reversed. Diadem. Now, just a quick one on Diadem. People are like, because, if people always say to me in the UK, they're like, I Googled your business and I saw crowns with Diana in it. And I'm like, okay, so let's get a little bit of education, because I must admit I was ignorant too. So diadem actually means crown in Greek, ancient Greece, right? So the whole idea of a roof having a crown, which is a green crown. So that's where the whole idea of diadem comes from. So diadem.com is the website. You'll have all our products and information there. You can find me on LinkedIn, is Iain Hamilton-Gates, which has got 2 I's, I-A-I-N. So little respect to my Scottish ancestry, just to rub it in there. Hamilton-Gates. And my website, my email address is Iain, I-A-I-N, .hg@diadem.com.
Okay, and when we launch and broadcast this episode, we make sure all of that is added in so people can find you. And we wish you really well with this technology. I've got some ideas of. I've already been speaking to some of my organisations I've been working with, and we will have some more chats offline. So, Iain, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing the insights into your origin story and, where you've got this technology and where it's going, which is, I'm very intrigued to see it's transitioning into the solar world, which I think is amazing. So I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us, and please, you and your family stay safe in these times.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Take care.